Okay, Andy, is the PowerPoint visible?
Yes, PowerPoint's visible and I've had the notification for the recording.
Thank you ever so much. So yes, we have Emma and Pippa from CASA this afternoon and Atty on the Better Together team. So they're going to talk through how they support inclusive recruitment. So over to Emma and Pippa.
Thank you, Kirsten. Good afternoon, everybody. So we've come along today, Pippa and I have come along today to just talk about some of the work that we have supported clients with around reasonable adjustments. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we know as an organisation that employing autistic people adds value to and benefits workplaces, and that some employers will actively recruit autistic people. Some of the examples are the intelligence and security services, IT companies, accountancy and banking. We know that autism can be associated with dependability, reliability, with people being on time and being honest. Many have attention to detail and can concentrate for long periods of time and focusing on work tasks, and that autistic people can have systemised ways of thinking.
So another thing that we do know about autistic employees is that they often show high levels of loyalty. They might look at things slightly differently. So maybe if you're working on a task together, they might be able to see a more logical way of doing it. So they have those logical patterns of thinking. They're often creative, and they're often finding innovative ways of solving problems or solving issues within the workplace. So it is actually illegal for employers to discriminate against a person because of a disability. Autism is a recognised disability under the Equality Act 2010, and that protects an autistic person and covers the following: their application forms, interview arrangements, aptitude or proficiency tests, job offers, terms and conditions of their employment, promotion, transfers and training opportunities, dismissal or redundancy, and discipline and grievances.
So this report was produced by the Centre for Research in Autism and Education at University College London. So it's the DARE report. And interestingly, 87% of participants surveyed felt that adjustments would make a critical difference to their performance at work. Yet only 53% felt unable to ask for adjustments, or had them refused, or had adjustments poorly implemented. 34% reported that their request for adjustments had been successfully implemented, and 44% reported that the most common type of adjustments requested related to processes of communication. Unfortunately, only 2% of participants reported that their employers had proactively supported seeking and implementing adjustments. So with regards to reasonable adjustments, the Equality Act requires all employees, education establishments and statutory organisations to make reasonable adjustments. Reasonable adjustment is an alteration employers must implement to individuals' working life to help break down the barriers that some people experience in their roles. These adjustments can only be requested if the individual discloses their diagnosis to the employer, and it should be something that is negotiated between the employer and tailored to the individual's specific needs.
When we're thinking about autism and an autistic employee, reasonable adjustments are going to be different for everybody, but some of the main aspects or kind of categories that we might look at for an autistic employee would be consideration of the following: sensory challenges, communication style, social interaction, executive functioning difficulties, processing difficulties, and anxiety. So what we've done is we've taken some of those reasonable adjustment points and we've put here some charts that explain what the challenges are and some suggested reasonable adjustments that could be put in place. So these are not reasonable adjustments that will cost any money, particularly. They're not things that take a lot of time for managers to implement, but it's some considerations for you. We want to show that it can be quite easy to provide reasonable adjustments for an autistic employee. So the first one here is about sensory challenges. So many autistic people can be either hyper or hyposensitive to changes in their environment. This could be visual environments such as lights or noise, such as doors slamming, movement, smells. So some suggestions of reasonable adjustments would be to provide a quiet room to complete any assessments or tasks where they're really required to keep their focus, keep their concentration, because then that can help to reduce sensory overload. It can help them to concentrate, help to reduce them feeling overwhelmed. Employers could support the use of noise cancelling headphones, so this reduces auditory distractions when completing their tasks at work or perhaps during interview, so that they can focus. Provide a scent-free environment. So some autistic people can be really, really sensitive to smell, and that can really be distracting. So perhaps it would be a consideration that the interviewers don't wear perfume, or if they're having a shared lunch, maybe there's no fish and egg or things like that provided in a shared lunch, just so that people can participate and be part of that experience together. Allow individuals to wear sunglasses. Quite often in offices we have big strip lights that can be quite glary, or LED lights, and that can be very distracting to people's sensory experience. We could consider hybrid or flexible working. So perhaps if they could work half of the week at home, so that they're able to manipulate their environment and make it work for them. Perhaps consider shorter breaks more frequently. So instead of maybe having an hour, they can have several 10-minute breaks, just to be able to have a bit of a breather and a focus. And then use of extra equipment for sensory challenges. So that again might be headphones, sunglasses, computer tech. So thinking about maybe screen filters for a laptop or PC monitor in a particular colour that works for them.
Many autistic people may experience challenges with communication, particularly when they're under pressure or in situations that can create anxiety. This can cause someone to lose focus and not be able to respond fully. So some of the reasonable adjustments could be request written communication. So this could also be if meetings do have to be in person, ensuring that you follow up with the minutes fairly quickly after, or perhaps doing a summary of what was discussed if these meetings do take place in person. This can help to communicate thoughts and responses more effectively. And also they can be used as a reference for somebody to go back and check any information that's been discussed. It's important to offer extra time for processing, particularly if people struggle with verbal communication or if they are in a high pressure scenario. And it's always important to allow a little bit of extra time for processing any questions and for providing responses. So another quite big challenge for autistic people can be social interaction. So autism can impact this significantly, especially when a lot of our interaction is based on neurotypical preferences such as keeping eye contact, shaking hands. Many autistic people may face challenges understanding social cues, non-verbal communication, and initiating professional social interactions. So some reasonable adjustments that could be put in place is requesting virtual meetings where possible. People can find these less intimidating and provide a more comfortable environment for social interaction. Some of these meetings would naturally take place in somebody's own home where they are most comfortable. They could request to communicate through written communication, so again, email or text. Again, it can be less stressful and give more time to process and respond. Ensuring that clear instructions are being given So making sure that people are available for clarifying any questions or concerns that somebody may have. This can help reduce anxiety and confusion. Helps for autistic people to have an allocated desk rather than hot desking, so that can stop any kind of anxiety in the morning that somebody going into the office may be feeling because they don't know where they're going to be working, where they're going to be sitting, and also flexible hours. That's really useful for people to ensure that they have a pattern that suits the needs and body clock, their body clock. It may be appropriate at times for people to request exemption from team meetings and social gatherings, particularly if there's some team building exercises or if these are non-essential meetings or social events outside of work.
So next one is executive functioning. So it's what we need when we must do something with a piece of information that we have, such as remembering things, knowing the steps to carry out instructions, being able to understand a piece of information in order to be able to ask questions about it and get it clear in our mind. So a reasonable adjustment would be being given written instructions in addition to verbal instructions. So that would enable the autistic employee to refer back to the instructions as needed, and then that reduces the demand on the working memory. So kind of if we're in a meeting or if something gets said and they're asked maybe 4 or 5 things to do that day, then having those written down is going to be much more productive and much more helpful, and it will negate the need for them to keep coming to ask you what to do next. Getting extra time to complete tasks, so that helps with kind of processing. If the processing time is slightly longer, or if they want to ask some questions, then it gives them time to digest the information and come up with their important questions that they might have. Maybe again, some more frequent breaks, allowing the brain time to rest and recharge and get back at it afterwards. Maybe using some memory aids. So these could be things that we have at work already, such as notebooks or checklists, kind of to-do lists. And there's other tools that can help people to remember important information. Visual aids can sometimes help, such as diagrams and flow charts, something visual if there's a bit of complex information, or staff structure chart or something where things are going off in different directions. It can help to really see it in a diagram to help it make sense. And then time management and project management apps. So we've been looking at some of these in work recently, and there are some extremely good ones at low cost that help with scheduling tasks, knowing what's happening, knowing what task leads into the next one, and what people need to be able to complete that task. And they're very, very productive. So something like that would be helpful. And then the last challenge that we have is about processing differences. So some autistic people may hyperfocus, which can cause difficulty when we're transitioning and moving between tasks. Reasonable adjustments for this would again be some assistive technology. So it might be a certain app that has a countdown timer on, or helps to split up the time in the working day, ensuring regular breaks, ensuring access to a quiet environment with less stimuli, which will help alleviate distractions, and people can really be allowed that really good focus time to get work done. A clear point of contact to communicate with, using the individual's preferred method of contact. So where sometimes we might move from office to office and talk to somebody and ask them for something, perhaps that's not the best way for an autistic employee. Perhaps it's best to send an email or a text message, and have that as your way of communicating, so that again they can look back on it. But that would really be asking the individual what their preference is. More frequent supervision with an appropriate supervision form to include a review of reasonable adjustments already in place and any changes needed. So this will, so every individual, we've said already, will need different reasonable adjustments, but those reasonable adjustments will also change in time. It will change across roles. So it's really important to remember to keep reviewing those, make sure that what's in place is still helping. If there's any life changes and they need some changes to those reasonable adjustments, then we can make sure we keep on top of those during supervision time. Access to a digital recorder. So this can be particularly helpful if there's lots of meetings involved, if people are allowed to digitally record it so that they can go back and listen to what's been said, what are the agreed actions or targets that they must complete. And again, backup verbal instructions with an email. So most of those reasonable adjustments don't cost any money. They will be person-centered. You can ask the autistic person, would this be helpful to you? You know, what support do you need? And these are just a few examples of ways that you can help achieve that.
Thank you ever so much, Emma and Pippa. That's amazing. And I hope everyone has increased their knowledge. So again, if you have questions for Emma and Pippa, please use the chat function and we will ask at the end of this session. So now I'd like to introduce Ati, who's from the Better Together team, and Ati is going to discuss about how they have built inclusive recruitment processes into their organisation.
So, hi, sorry. My name is Attica. It means, I'm going to just introduce myself. It means prosperity and someone you can lean on in Arabic. I hope as a positive action officer, I kind of live up to my name when supporting people from different protected characteristics. I just want to share some information about myself as well. I love food, I love traveling and experiencing new things. I love pushing my boundaries, even though I'm really scared. So I do things like scuba diving, even though I have a phobia of fish, and I have a phobia of heights, so I do things like paragliding, and I soon want to do skydiving. Anyway, that's just a little bit about myself, so you can relate. So just to let you know, I'm a positive action officer from the Better Together team at Gloucester Constabulary. The Better Together team, the phrase was chosen because we recognise that effective legitimate policing is enhanced when we work closely with our communities, our staff and volunteers who seek to understand, value and support differences. So today I'm going to talk to you about how we build an inclusive recruitment process. But just a question, does your organisation have a D&I? If it doesn't, like, why not? Could you move on to the next slide, please? So today, oh, not that one, the content one. Sorry, thank you. Before I start, I just want to highlight that promoting equality falls under the Equality Act 2010. So structures in society mean that not everyone starts from the same position. There may be barriers that prevent people from achieving their potential. So we should be empowered to remove these barriers for those with neurodiversity and ability to enter the workplace and level that playing field. So having an inclusive process takes time. My colleagues and I will highly agree that we at Gloucester Constabulary still have a long way to go to make this happen, but we have taken some steps to achieve this, so we are heading in the right direction. In this presentation, I would try to briefly cover the following areas mentioned above, which is recruitment attraction, application process, the interview process, and what are reasonable adjustments, what might help and why. Next. Content. Okay, so in order to secure the right talent for your business, we need to understand the importance of inclusion at every stage. This includes advertising a vacancy in the right way, ensuring that candidates have an equal opportunity to see the advert, attend the interview with reasonable adjustments will ultimately ensure that you have provided the best opportunity to secure the right talent. It requires us to be proactive and have targeted recruited strategies in order to attract and engage with candidates that are neurodiverse. So you need to be proactive and strategic in where and how you advertise, so they have an equal opportunity to see adverts. So what we do is use a variety of different platforms to raise awareness of your vacancies. Just don't promote it on your website. Use a DWP website. Use a Facebook, Instagram. We also 2 years ago we created an in-house Better Together magazine. Within that magazine we highlight staff and officers within our constabulary who from different sections from the organisation, because we have around 100 different departments, and they highlight their role within it, and they talk about their challenges, they talk about they just talk about their story. So when we hand these out to people within the community, they're able to like relate to them and say, hey, someone with neurodiversity is in an organization and they're doing amazing things. That could be me too. What else we do is we go to targeted community engagement fairs in schools to promote our organisation and vacancies. So you could possibly do that as well. When we do that, we invite our colleagues from neurodiversity and ability to be ambassadors and debunk any myths. A lot of people think that policing isn't for people that are neurodiverse and ability, and it's far from it. So when we take along our colleagues, it's really amazing that people can, like, people are just like, oh, I didn't know, I thought I had to hide it. It just makes them a lot more open to applying for roles. Our staff associations are amazing, extremely proactive. So if you have an organisation and you don't have one, help them establish one. Support them in an organisation so their voices are valued and recognised. Just to highlight that this organisation, they're holding a Spectrums Works Fair tomorrow, so that's a targeted recruitment event. And the NHS Big Health and Wellness Day is happening soon as well. So put that in your calendar. Next one, please. So we also have a talent bank whereby people who are interested in career in policing can sign up, who would regularly inform them of any jobs that are coming up. I'm assuming most organisations have this, where people are interested and you send them regular like job vacancies saying this job is available. Well, we kind of go a little bit further. So not only do we tell people that are jobs, we also send emails to people that are from protected characteristics like ability and neurodiversity, and make them aware of the support that positive action officers like me can offer to them. So we can give them application support and we can give them interview support. We go through our core value framework, we tell them about what to expect, etc. We provide more support and we give access to Better Together ambassadors. So Better Together ambassadors are from all sections of our constabulary. So if someone is interested in a certain department, we might not have the knowledge for it, but someone else, we can put them in contact with someone else that can tell them what it's really like in that department, so they can feel whether it's something that is for them. So you could think about doing something like that. We let them decide how they want their support. So it could be online, it could be Teams, it can be in person, etc. I would also suggest your organisations become disability confident. It is a government initiative designed to encourage employers to recruit and retain disabled people and those with health conditions. I have found that it has allowed our force to really scrutinise our processes, and it has helped us improve and put processes in place for our force to get better. Additionally, we have found that branding has led to an actual increase from people from neurodiversity and disability, which is absolutely amazing. So promote it on your website, promote it on your leaflets, on your boards, etc. Next page, please. So make the application process unfortunately, like, no one is immune to unconscious bias. So recruitment process should be redesigned to reduce the influence of bias and discrimination whilst getting the most suitable candidate for a role. This is a fair analysis of the competency and will allow a hiring team to make more informed decisions. So make the application process clear and transparent. Like, make it clear how they're supposed to apply. Is it going to be online? Is it going to be on paper? Include all the steps to recruitment process, including dates for interviews and possible start dates. Include answers to basic questions. Even offer like a contact name and number so it can make it easier for them to contact. Include more marginalised candidates in the shortlisting panel. Have a blind recruitment process for removing personal details and identifying factors such as your age, years of work experience, education institutions, protected characteristics, etc. Seriously, research has shown that anonymising the process has led to an increased number of people from protected traits attending an interview, and we have found that just in the force itself. So that's something I would highly recommend you do. So don't dismiss if there are also grammatical errors, because focus on the content rather than the application. Focus on the content of the application, as they may have dyslexia. And something else we also do is we automatically invite candidates to interviews if they meet the minimum criteria, because a lot of people may be able to showcase themselves better in person as opposed to on paper. So these are steps you can take to help level the playing field during the application process. Can you go on to the next page, please? Interview process. So when offering interviews, it's important to make scheduling interviews easy and make it accessible and flexible. So offer a range of interview dates and times to accommodate the needs of the candidate. This is a practice, unfortunately, that we still need to enforce better. I would also suggest that if you're going to have if you got an interview and you're going to invite someone, give them leeway to like prepare for the interview. We give around a week, but I think personally we should do around 2 weeks so they can spend some time just preparing themselves and get themselves in the right mind. Offer flexibility in how an interview can be carried out. If it's possible, have it on Teams, have it in person, like let them decide. Have a diverse interview panel. It has been shown to lead to fairer and more accurate results, amazingly. Conduct structured interviews for all candidates. Ask predefined sets of questions. Use this game scoring criteria. So in our organisation, we use the Bradford we use I've forgotten the name actually, but it doesn't matter. So it helps to minimise bias and ensure there is a level playing field for candidates from marginalised groups. This is because it makes it easier for the panel to make direct and fair comparisons between candidates using objective criteria. There is high quality evidence that there's no differences in interview scores for candidates when structured interviews are used. Can you go to the next page, please? And adapter, please. Thank you. So when conducting interviews, I always say we should be able to make the interviewee comfortable enough so they can showcase themselves the best they possibly can, so we can truly get the right person for the job. My view is that if we don't do this successfully, we are not doing a good job as an interviewer. So this is amazing. University of Bath has conducted a lot of research in regards to autism. One of their suggestions found that making adaptations to interviews helps to support memory recall and promote a greater understanding of what it actually requires in response to questions. So we as employers can make positive adaptations to the interview process, particularly to the questions which could provide better support for autistic candidates. So we have like a list of questions. So if you this is a common question that we usually get asked when we go to interviews, and it's simply like, tell me a little about yourself, which is so broad. Anyone can go on lots of different tangents. But for someone that has autism, this might support them better. This might help them more. So you kind of say, I'm going to ask you to give you a short introduction of yourself. So split it up. So what are your best personal characteristics? Let them answer it. And then come on to the second question. What are your educational qualifications? Give them time to answer it. And the next one, what work experience do you have? And this would just help them answer the question the best they possibly can without going on different tangents. That's it, really. It really does help support memory recall and promote a greater understanding of what actually required in response to questions. I know it helps me too. The next slide, please, for reasonable adjustments. So reasonable adjustments are there to design to level the playing field. I'm not going to go through it too much because my colleagues just went through it recently. But reasonable adjustments are changes that organisations or people providing services or people providing public functions have to make for you. They must make these changes to prevent your disability, putting you at a disadvantage compared with others who are not disabled. So the Equality Act says you have a disability if you have a physical or mental impairment that has substantial adverse effect or long-term effect on your ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. So the focus is on one's mental health rather than the diagnosis. So it's a really common myth that we have even in our force that we're trying to debunk. You do not need a formal diagnosis to get a reasonable adjustment. So although a diagnosis would help us understand how our brains work or what you're good at and what makes us tick and what support our brains needs. So is an RA actually required? So when you have a candidate and you're looking at whether reasonable adjustment is needed, ask yourself these two questions, or ask them these two questions. Will the candidate experience a disadvantage or barrier during the interview process? Are they experiencing a disadvantage or barrier because of their disability? If the answer is yes to both these, then you need to make a reasonable adjustment. And then think about what adjustment could remove this barrier. I would really highly suggest you include the candidate in your discussion. So next page, please. So some of the examples of reasonable adjustments that you can make in an interview is like laminating the questions so they can see it as you're reading them. Adjust the font type, the font text, the size and the color to what they prefer it to be. Provide the questions 20 minutes beforehand just so they can compose themselves and they can see what answers might be best, which scenarios might be best for each question. Let them choose like a preferred paper color. Provide extra time to answer questions. Give them regular breaks if they need it. So some interviews can be like 3 hours long, but if you provide them breaks, it might just help them. Show them the makeup of the room and provide information of their interviewer. So what we have done is we've had someone going through the inspector process, and what we have done is shown them the makeup of the room, and we've shown them who their interviewer is, just so they can it just help them basically and calm them down. So when you're making reasonable adjustments, you do need to look at whether an adjustment is actually reasonable. So look at the effectiveness. How does the adjustment in question remove or at least minimize the disadvantage? Look at the practicality. So is it a practical adjustment? How long will it take to implement? Will anyone need extra training? Think about cost. How much will it cost? What financial resources are available in your organizations? Look at access to work, for example. Disruption. So how disruptive will this reasonable adjustment be to your organization? The needs of the organization would, and the needs of the organization would it be to make this adjustment? And the risk, would making adjustments cause any risk to others? So these are things you can possibly look at when looking at whether a reasonable adjustment is fine. So as I end this presentation, I do want to highlight that we need to continuously educate ourselves so we can better support people with ability and neurodiversity of high quality training. It will help us to improve our understanding, reduce stigma, and make changes to process and policies. But most importantly, I do want to highlight, involve your staff, your neurodiverse and from ability. It will open your mind, it is open mind. It will create spaces for status quo to be challenged in a safe space, and will ultimately help to inspire inclusion. Like I say, we can't inspire inclusion if we don't get to know our people. We have to be open enough. So if someone wants to share something, they are receptive to it. And try to see what we have in our power to see how we can level the playing field in the best possible way. Sorry, you're still on. And that's it.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant. I know we have some people in the room with lived experience. So I just want to open up the floor to them to share their experiences of being interviewed or going through the recruitment process. So Andrew, I know you're on the call.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I was going to pass to Josh. Oh, sorry.
Oh, Josh.
I'll pass to Josh. I'll pass to Josh first. Would you like to say anything
So,
also
yeah.
about potentially about
Yes,
what your organisation's done?
Yeah, so in our organisation, Josh, we use ability for disability. It's a term that they've decided to use for themselves.
Yeah, no, I wondered why, because yeah, I mean, disabled people. I think, first of all, I think using language that is accepted by disabled people and used, through the social model of disability is really important. I think that's definitely, as an autistic and ADHD person, I think when I see, maybe looking at jobs, looking at adverts, when I see language that feels right, then I would be more likely to, apply. So I think, yeah, that's definitely something that is on my mind when I'm, looking for, an employer that welcomes me and includes me. But Kirsten, you were just wanting to know about kind of some of the things that are helpful.
So what experiences have you had, or what advice would you give to employers that are with us today?
So repeat that again?
I think sorry. Yeah, so in terms of advice, I would say it's really in terms of recruitment, I think it's really important to be honest, to look at starting from job descriptions, being really honest about what's essential and what's desirable. I know there's lots of kind of generic things that you write in job descriptions that can sometimes mean that people won't apply. I know research has been done that shows a lot of autistic and neurodivergent candidates will look at job descriptions and take them very literally, as I do. And you might see, 20 things that you can do, but there might be one that, you feel doesn't match your skill set. And it might be listed as essential, but it stops you from actually applying. So I think that's a common experience. So being really, starting from just kind of the job descriptions and adverts, being really clear about what actually is essential and what's desirable. I think, being really clear about what will happen in the interview process. So, where to go, stuff about the building, parking, all details like that, that those unknowns can really add to to the experience. And also, I would really suggest that questions in advance are standard. Rather than, I think what's really important as well is to probably for employers to learn a little bit more about where they can just remove barriers for everyone. Sometimes it feels, you feel tired to constantly ask for adjustments, and sometimes they don't need to be adjustments. For example, if you gave interview questions to everyone in advance, people who need them as adjustment wouldn't have to ask, which I think, and I would recommend, giving interview questions out in advance, several days in advance, if you can. I think that's really important. And also, as employers, I think, I know I've seen job adverts where they're seeking diverse talents and so on, but actually there's no mention of adjustments. So it's almost like you're seeking out diversity, but you actually haven't done the work. And I think that's probably a red flag for a lot of disabled people and neurodivergent people, where there's this active search for a diverse workforce, but actually the work isn't happening to enable people to be included or people to thrive. So I think, Andrew, I don't know if you have anything.
I was just thinking of a few things. I also want to just say, in terms of arrival, I actually really do appreciate if there's something which describes where, maybe even an image of where things are, so that I'm not like constantly. It's almost like when my anxiety's up a bit about things, I'm like going, oh, is this really the right place, or is it not the right place? Or it sounds like it, but actually a bit of an image or some such like, and just be aware of where where signage is and anything that might for arrival things. Questions in advance. So I think one of the things that doesn't mean that you have to have provided almost like the nth degree of questions in advance, enough to set the scene so the person can have but once you've opened the conversation, of course you want to probe a little bit, but once you've opened the conversation and move that forward, then it means that you can start, you've got a little bit more of a ease and in the topic, and then you can explore a bit more, because otherwise you're like, oh yeah, but how am I gonna set all the questions in advance? That means that everybody could just fake the questions or fake the answers or such like, if we give them to everybody, because that's one of the other things to be aware of, is actually many autistic or other neurodivergent individuals actually can be quite precise sometimes in the way that they answer something. One of the things I spot when I've done interviewing of people is that sometimes that actually there are, I'm hesitant to say it, but actually it's more using the neurotypical, actually people will sometimes explode upwards what their experience is in something, and actually you sometimes find the reverse happens with an autistic person or a thing. They go, oh yeah, when you ask about that, yeah, that's that little bit that I did. And they don't necessarily say sell their part in the team and such like. So it's sometimes you might get the reverse picture of someone's role, which and it's just to be, I'm aware of that. In terms of environment, I think just in terms of like reasonable adjustments, one of the things it's possibly helpful to have in terms of reasonable adjustments is rather like a bit of a checklist, is have the sorts of things in mind that somebody might want to ask for, or you could make aware that you can do. So one of the things is like quiet areas on arrival or such like, but it's just so also that you're aware of them, because many people who might be applying, and especially, and because I really appreciate the fact that the constabulary there was saying, well, you don't have to have had a diagnosis to have got to ask for reasonable adjustments, but that's great. But what the converse side of that is, actually many of the people might not realise or be able to enunciate very clearly what their reasonable adjustments are, and just being able to highlight a few of those things. But many of the times actually those reasonable adjustments are really good for everything. If everything's it's a bit like, it's just like even back to the job adverts, really clear and concise job adverts are really good for everybody. Questions which are clear and not. When I've been interviewed for quite a senior role, the person asking the question asked a question that was like, yeah, it was one question, but it was like 6 sentences long, and I'm pretty sure they had no clue what they were actually asking themselves. So now I had to work with that and actually explore with them what they were trying to get at. That's not a very good questioning style, but that's the same for everybody. One of the things Josh mentioned about reasonable adjustments. Actually, the less reasonable adjustments that you have to do because they are the norm, the better. So if things are just, information that's sent out is just not high density format, but is in just nicely, clearly laid out, very straightforward, that's good for everybody as well, because that's parts of the things which are reasonable adjustments, which the person can't actually ask before you've, when you're calling people in, or you're sending information out to them, they haven't yet started that relationship with you. So therefore it's important that you do those what would be good practice beforehand. It's just a few thoughts. I think there's also about time things. So I'm gonna say, so I've had quite a lot of practice in different sessions, and it means I know to not just carry on rattling out about a particular topic thing. And I think there is a tendency, but obviously when you're in an interview situation, you might just go, oh yeah, this person's really bad, because they just keep going on about the thing and they never stop. And actually one of the things I'm looking for is them to stop. Sometimes actually a bit of boundary, while you don't know the person, actually it's a really good thing often to just put a little bit of boundary, saying, can you just talk for a couple of minutes about that, just a little bit of a time bound, or I would appreciate a nudge saying, yeah, no, I've heard enough now. And it's like going, I don't want to take it personally. I don't take it personally. It's just sometimes, especially if I've got my anxiety up, then I'll just carry on. I wonder if they've heard enough yet. Let me just add some more things. Oh, I know, I'll drill down a bit there. And it's like going, no, they didn't necessarily need to know that. And I know that. And I personally, of course, have understanding about putting the hooks in to allow some of the questions, but many of the people won't have that, and they will just expand out. Anyway, so sorry, I'll shut up, because that's a
really good suggestion there, Andrew. That is a really good suggestion. Put in a time. Fabulous. I know we've got only 10 minutes left, so I'm going to ask Andy just to check the chat room to see if we've got any questions.
I have checked, and Josh's question has already been answered, that he raised when Atty was speaking about the comment from people from Ability. But this is a perfect opportunity. I'm assuming everybody can use the chat, and if anybody can't, then do please raise a hand. I know sometimes external protocols mean that the chat function might be, or at least I'm given to understand that's possible. But other than that, if now's a perfect opportunity to ask of our presenters and our people with lived experience who are present, anything that you want in these next couple of minutes. So please feel free to add it, and I'm happy to read it out for you if you add it to the chat box.
I also wanted to raise the issue of personality tests as well. I've been through recruitment processes where I've had to do like profiling or personality tests, and I felt that, and then have a discussion about it, and I felt that they often, personality tests, they use kind of very typical norms in kind of judging what kind of personality you have. So to kind of sometimes be in a position where you're justifying your personality in a way, and some of the things that come up as like potential development needs, where actually it's just the way your brain works can be quite difficult. So yeah, some of those things can really put neurodivergent and autistic people at a disadvantage. And also I was going to say, there was example in interview questions where I went to an interview where I was asked to use the the STAR format in answering questions. So they gave me the STAR format and said, this is how we would like you to answer the question. So that was really useful, because it gives you a framework to to work in, and questions really tested your competencies and experience by asking you, tell us about a time when, and then you were able to. So yeah, some things that I think are.
That's great.
I do have a comment. It's actually from Jennifer James, and if I would read it out, because I know Andrew's got his hand up, Kirsten, we can go to Andrew afterwards. And Jennifer puts, ensure people put clear timescales for applications without any ambiguity. As an example, don't put close of play on blah, blah, blah date. Put midnight on the exact date, or 1700 hours on the exact date, depending on the exact time up to which you are prepared to accept the applications. And I think it's a really important point there, Jennifer. If you introduce ambiguity, you're going to introduce confusion.
That's a really good point. Andrew.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add it because that was a really good point that's in there. And so I was going to add a couple of things. One is, if you've not got questions, but you already have some things that you do feel free to just stick them in the chat as good ideas, because I think that's an excellent one on the timescales. And actually having clear timescales, regardless for anything, is really good. I'll just say that I am terrible if somebody hasn't put a timescale. If they haven't put a closing date, then I'll just, because part of the difficulty is that's part of that closing date also is the thing that means that I set myself a target, and otherwise it might actually disappear out of my brain.
Yeah.
The other thing is on questions sometimes, and that might pertain to like some of the personality types or such, like if you do little pre things with multiple choice questions, be very wary, because often so many of those I'll just say from my experience, they'll crash me in terms of reading them, because I'll go, none of those answers quite fit. And now I sit there for 5 minutes like going, yeah, and because I've been in the situation so often where I filled out the things, everybody else has finished, and I'm like at question 4, because all the questions are not quite, they're almost like too prescriptive. It's like, no, that doesn't work. So how do I make the best match? And it's like going, just be very sorry. It was just an extra thing to be wary of. Oh yes, and so extra ones in there from Jennifer. Thank you very much about the map and pictures of the entranceways and such like. That's really good.
I think that's it, Kirsten. In Jennifer
Brilliant.
raised the point, anything that can really support and help. It's hard to imagine what individuals might need. It's good to ask them to let you know what they think they need and respond as best you can. And just to Josh's point as well, I know from my own personal experience in the past, we've used all manner of different tools, tests and psychological inputs, and too often people take them as prescriptive. They say, oh, this is the personality of that individual, when in fact all of those tools at best might give you some area of guidance as to what kind of person they might be, but it should be further discussed. Do I have another question, which is from Joe, which says, what time management and project management apps do you recommend? That's a good question.
That's a good question. Who's that directed to?
It's not. And if Joe,
Okay.
if you wanted to jump on, Joe, and tell us if there was anyone in particular that you had in mind for your question, or whether you're happy to get the best answer from anyone.
Well, I think Pippa and Emma refer to those. So therefore, yes, it is. So
Emma.
if you have any of the ones, or actually, if all else fails, you can always provide it. You can provide that in some information afterwards. But if you've got any that you know of that you can recommend at the moment, and I'll throw in one that I've heard of. Is Trello actually is one that some people use for as a way of being able to do stuff. Anyway, sorry, Pippa and Emma.
But if you are coming to our session on Monday, that's something that we can add. So that's resources in the workplace. So we can start from these sessions gathering apps that the attendees may want to know. Sorry, Emma, over to you.
Yeah, I think I can't remember what the project management app was called, but I can send it in a link or in an email after this. I just need to check my emails to remember which one it was, but the client that I'm supporting who's using it, finding it really, really helpful for his daily kind of personal life as well, and organising his home and managing his time at home as well as at work. So I will find out and just confirm the name of that and let you know if that's okay. Shall I email it to you, Kirsten?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
I do use the Brain in Hand app. I don't know if anyone's used the Brain in Hand app, but it's quite expensive, but it can be funded through Access to Work. I think it's about £1,500 a year, but that comes with some support as well. But it's not necessarily a project management and time management app, but it does help you to be better at both. I recommend looking it up.
I mean, I just say on a practical side, I mean, I use a couple of things. I actually use Kindle Scribe, and I have lists that I do, and I can maneuver stuff around. And it's just, I find that and it's like it's almost like these things are a bit personal, and almost like the important thing is to try and I think that'll be a really good thing for us to do, is to try and highlight a few that people have found useful. And then it's enabling people to have their attention drawn to them, and that so they can go, yeah, actually that fits the way. And especially if they can see a bit of a demonstration about the way they use. I mean, I've just used also an Excel spreadsheet with the things in that I fill in at the beginning of the day with the things I want to do and such like, and then I can just shunt the things around a bit when they're finished, but I can keep a record. It's like going, and in fact sorry, I was just saying, somebody mentioned Excel Jennifer mentioned Excel in there, but sorry, I didn't I haven't read it all out. Anyway, sorry, that's just.
That's okay, Andrew, because I can summarise that, and it's a very fair point from Jennifer, because I'm conscious of where the time's concerned. But it does, in essence, it reiterates the importance of the description in the advertisement, which when you're looking for a specific skill, and I think it was Josh that mentioned it earlier about being listed as essential, it can put people off of applying. So it's really vital to let people know that you do welcome those applications. I've seen several that are worded to encourage people to apply, even if they don't meet all of the listed criteria but have an interest. Not quite sure whether we could ever agree on what the best words are, but I think words of that type in an advertisement would potentially overcome that barrier. Over to you. Thank you.
Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. But I'd just like to say thank you ever so much to our guest speakers. Thank you, Josh and Andrew. Thank you, Andy, for assisting. If you do have any questions, so when you go away and reflect from today's session, if you do have any questions, please do email employers@gloucestershire.gov.uk, and if we don't have the answer, we can reach out to Josh, Andrew, Pippa, Emma, or Atty. So just like to say thank you again for your time. If you're joining our other sessions, see you soon, but have a lovely afternoon. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.